friends at the game show wanted us to take a look at this, and we weren't quite done with Star Wars content, so here's Masters of Teras. You ready, Dakota?
Sure, how bad could it be?
Knockout. You lose. Knockout. You lose. Knockout. You lose.
Shit! Ho 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 ho. I'm gonna go get us a drink. So Masters of Teras was developed in 1997 by LucasArts for PlayStation. It's also a Star Wars game. One that's often considered to be a contender for the worst of all time. See, in 1997, LucasArts had a handful of games on a variety of consoles, including the NES and N64, but the Sony PlayStation was a completely untapped market. But coming off the high of the multimedia success that was the Shadows of the Empire project, anything with the Star Wars name on it seemed like a no-brainer. And I mean, who wouldn't want to see a good Star Wars 3D fighter?
The fuck?
The key word here being good. From the first match, it's easy to tell that there's something seriously wrong here. We're told to choose a character and are given a countdown, then beat into oblivion. And I know that a lot of fighting games of this era only really had a couple of game modes and no real story, but we're not even given a combos list. If I bought this in 1997, dropped it into my PlayStation and booted it up, am I supposed to just figure it out? Or am I supposed to buy the Prima strategy guide? It's doing very little to make this accessible to Star Wars fans who aren't fans of fighting games, and if you're not a fan of Star Wars, you're probably not going to take the risk on this. Like, it's just not presented in a way that says, this is a fighting game, and that's not improved by a mediocre name. Something like Marvel vs. Capcom, Mortal Kombat vs. DC, or Pokken Tournament hints to us in the title and promotional material that they're a fighting game with characters we love, but the appeal of those is its inclusion of characters from two different franchises to appeal to fans of both. And you're like, well, this isn't a versus game. Why would we have a versus game? And I'm like, well, because why would we have a Star Wars fist fighting game? In the long list of shit that's interesting in Star Wars, is fist fighting anywhere close to the top? Is it even in the first 100? I didn't think so. And that might be helped if we were given some kind of cool Masters of Terra exclusive characters, but we're only really given Girl with Giant Robotic Hand, Gamorrean Guard number 2, and a Tusken Raider named Whore. Son of a bitch. I know what all you whore fanboys and sand girls are saying. That little Gorfa was the sole survivor of Anakin's temper tantrum out in the Dune Sea. You know, this one? Because he was out, according to Wikipedia, bonding with his bantha. The old EU is truly a magical place. And so I get that these characters have been retroactively inserted into bigger parts of the saga and has led to a small fan following. Like, name aside, Whore isn't the worst character in all of Star Wars. It's obviously Zero the Hutt. No, clearly it's
New
Boss
Gunray.
Nass. No.
You're forgetting
Yaddle. And as I'm scrubbing through other characters' entries, I actually really like how they fit into the larger expanded universe. Arden Lynn in particular is sort of like a Star Wars Philip J. Fry. Having fallen into a deep sleep during the early expansionist era, she was a leader of some dark Jedi, and a master of Teras Case who woke up 25,000 years later and recruited by the Empire to kill Luke Skywalker. Like another beloved woman in the old expanded universe. And like Mara Jade, she's also acted as Emperor's Hand.
Here he goes again.
No, I'm done. That's pretty much all I've got.
Wait, really?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of the information about these characters comes from the game's manual, and almost none of it is relevant to the game itself.
In fact, it creates a lot of plot holes.
What?
Hear me out. If Arden Lynn is the master of Teras, wouldn't she just beat the bantha milk out of Luke, Leia, and the gang? I mean, it's like an MMA fighter challenging some level 7 paladin to duke it out in the octagon. You can only throw magic missiles so many times until you get punched in the face. So wouldn't they just be screwed? Also, why would that be your be-all end-all way to defeat the rebellion? Luke blew up the Death Star and you're gonna send someone with a metal hand after him? I mean, why not send 2 metal hands? And hear me out, metal legs. Shit, wait, that's just Darth Vader. I don't know, it just seems like a strange choice. Like, we see Han Solo fight at least once, and it's nothing like this. I don't know. Terran's Castles just seems like a serious fighting method with honor, meaning, and tradition, but the OT gang are rebels. They're supposed to be knockdown, drag-out brawlers, and this sort of feels amiss.
But what do we know?
And I mean, even if all that was gone or fixed, we'd still be left with some glaring issues. The most obvious being a strange disconnect between the controls and the in-game movements. There's clear lag here between when a button is hit and when the attack happens on screen. And when the combos required are several buttons long and have to be hit extremely quickly, it's kind of tricky to actually do one. But don't worry, the CPU knows them and can do them quicker than you or any other human ever could. And when you actually learn at least one or two combos, they're done in a slow-paced, almost methodical way, which isn't intuitive for a fast-paced game. I think that's one of my major problems with Masters of Tarot cards. It feels methodical and slow and frankly boring. Weapons have to be drawn at the beginning of the match unless you're the Gamorrean guard. Maps are stale and colorless with characters to match. And the in-game unlockables don't do much for me either, except for the ones that actually unlock a level select. Because the game always picks a map at random until you meet a certain criteria. It's like it doesn't trust you with it, like it's standing over you, breathing down your neck, worried that you'll somehow fuck up and pick Bespin when Hor and Thok only ever met in Jabba's palace. Or perhaps more likely, the developers were furiously attempting to extend playtime by giving you one more thing to unlock. I mean, the character unlocks aren't really great either. We get one of very limited number of Mara Jade appearances in video game, which is cool and fitting because, as mentioned before, her and Arden Lin were both Emperor's hands. But other than that, there aren't really any that are worth the effort. Jodo Kast is kind of interesting, being a Boba Fett impersonator, but he doesn't play any differently from the galaxy's best bounty hunter. And he doesn't look different enough to be cool. And like Vader and a Stormtrooper are cool, but we all know how Vader would handle a rebellion. Not like this. And naturally, there's Leia in slave garb. I guess that's why this game's rated T for teen. No one under the age of 13 should really see that much ankle. I mean, that's standard unlockable shit, so I guess it's fine, but they don't make me actually want to play through them. They aren't a challenge to overcome. There's some shoddy incentive to make me play your less than satisfactory game. It's important to note that the idea for Masters of Torakasi came from a pitch from Capcom, which would have made it the first out-of-house Star Wars game. And after LucasArts looked them in the eye and say, boy, that's a great idea, let's not hire you, steal your idea, and make a bland, boring, colorless version, instead, Capcom released Star Gladiator. The game this game should have been. Star Gladiator is colorful, fluid, and fast-paced, in a way that Masters of Thor's Quesadilla isn't. The hits feel like hits and can be executed with style. Put simply, Star Gladiators is fucking WWE, with its fancy costumes, bright lights, and fun, upbeat music. And Masters of Teras Posse is that folk-style wrestling you had to do in gym class in middle school, while your gym teacher watches the underage girls do push-ups on the other side of the room instead of being a rep. So you and another prepubescent preteen in a used singlet are forced to roll around on the ground and pretend like you know what you're doing. Middle school was rough, man.
It is hard to miss the similarities between the two games.
I mean, a few of the characters even have lightsabers. However, there isn't a hassle of switching to and from weapon mode. They're more of a permanent fixture, which means I don't have to waste time pulling out my weapon at the beginning of every match. There isn't that awkward karate style that feels standardized across characters. Instead, they each have their own fighting styles and strategic benefits.
It works like most fighters should.
In a way that Masters of Terras Bueller Day Kos doesn't. I've said it before, I'm hesitant to tear into a Star Wars game like this, but I'm ashamed to admit that it just isn't fun. There's no charm here, no color, and a lack of functionality that should exist in Star Wars games. It feels like a cheap fighting game with Star Wars characters slapped over it so that it would actually sell something, and LucasArts wouldn't have to bother to create a new IP. Part of the appeal of Star Gladiator is how cool it looks, but LucasArts also had a team that could have performed at least adequately. Like, it's so blatantly obvious that this is a cheap cash-in at the highest level, and yeah, sure, Star Wars has been full of cheap cash grabs for years, but at least some of those were interesting. This is just stale and hollow in a way that is distinctly un-Star Wars. I have to pee. Do the wrap-up.
So, if you're into Capcom fighting games, too drunk for this. If you're into Capcom fighting games, the Polish word for steel hands, then pick up Masters of Teras. Masters of this game. Or don't. Please don't. Just don't. Just don't. Don't.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you're running low on good content, check out our friends over at The Game Show. They do a lot of Star Wars content as well as PC reviews and other goodies.